Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is the Qube Talent and Qube Learning 10 Things People Do Wrong on a CV webinar. We're going to take you through some very obvious errors that people make quite frequently with the view of hopefully it can help your CV and we can make it nice and shiny for you. Just a few little bits of housekeeping before we crack on with the actual webinar. If you can keep your webcams and your microphones off, please, that would be great, just so we can run the slides nice and easily. And if you do have any questions, there is a chat function available, so please do make use of that. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. We've got a colleague on standby waiting to collect all of your questions for us. So anything that pops up, please do pop it in there. So I'm now going to move into the presentation and do the introductions.
Good afternoon. My name's Fiona Dolan. I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager at Qube Learning. I've worked in recruitment for over 10 years now. I started off working for a very large recruitment agency. I was recruiting for construction and finance staff. I then moved on and worked within the HR department in recruitment at Oxford University Hospitals, and I have been at Qube now for over 7 years. I started off in apprenticeship recruitment and stayed there for about a year, and then moved into a talent acquisition partner role and subsequently talent acquisition manager for the last 6 years. I now manage the internal recruitment for Qube.
And hello again, everyone. My name is Kismet Finch. I am the Head of Skills Development here at Qube Learning. Similarly to Fiona, I've now been with the company 6 going on 7 years. And predominantly I work with job seekers across all of our different provisions, as well as manage the external recruitment arm of the business, which is Qube Talent. So we are going to move straight into the slides right now. And like I said beforehand, any questions, please do use the chat function that you have available on your landing page.
Right, so first off, one of the most important things really, when somebody opens your CV, the first thing they're going to see is the title. So I would always just have your name. It's the most simple thing. You don't need to put CV, you don't need to put curriculum vitae, just have your name at the top. The other thing that you don't need to do is have a photograph on there. It's something that the rest of the world still does, but it's not something that we do here in the UK. Nobody needs to make an assumption of you based on the photograph that you put on your CV. Secondly, you must make sure that your contact details are on your CV. Things like your telephone number, email address, and also your home address as well, because recruiters are going to need to know where you live in relation to the store, potentially the warehouse or the office that you're going to be working in. Thirdly, your personal details. Nobody needs to know if you're married, divorced, how many kids you have, whether you have grandchildren or not, or the year that you were born. These things are essentially protected characteristics. People can make an assumption of you based on these, and they're just not necessary. The font choice, maybe a little contentious issue here, but I'd prefer all of the CVs to come across in either Arial 10 or in Calibri. Comic Sans is one that's used quite frequently, but I don't think it really comes across professional. Spelling and grammar. Obviously, your CV is the first impression that somebody's going to have of you. So you need to ensure that your spelling and grammar is correct. There's various things that you can use online. Obviously, on your Word document, you can use a spell check on there. Just make sure that it's in UK English and not American English for that one. So always make sure that your spelling and grammar is correct.
So moving on, we've added in lacking/embellishing content. So there's nothing worse than receiving a CV where someone has had a job previously and there may be only 2 sentences to explain what they have done in that job role. Now, your CV never should be War and Peace, and there is the 2-page rule, generally speaking, but try and be concise and try and give some detail within that particular job role, because that could be the difference between your CV going forward or being rejected at this possible stage. And the experience order, again, Fiona and I have spoken about this a lot. We both think you should start with your current role, not the oldest role, because with all due respect, potentially a job you did maybe 15 years ago might not have that much of a bearing on the job you're actually applying for at this precise moment in time. So always try and start with your most recent experience, whether that be a job or work experience that you've done, or a particular activity you've undertaken. Whatever your most recent experience is, that should be the one that goes at the top.
Okay, so formatting. This can be quite difficult to resolve if you're not, if you don't use Word a lot. But there are some things that you can use on there to try and assist you, things like margins, and there's also a ruler on there as well. You must make sure that your CV is centralised, so you have the same margin left to right, and that you haven't got paragraphs that are running over your margins. So use the ruler function on there, and yeah, it just makes it a lot more professional looking. Make sure that your bullet points are all in line as well. Now, the CV length, it does depend on a lot of things. So maybe if you've come out of school and you haven't got lots of experience on there, don't feel as though you have to make it go over 2 pages. And also, if you've been working for the last 30 years and you have done a variety of jobs, don't feel as though you have to squash them onto 2 pages. But as a rule, sort of 2 pages is a decent length for a CV. Attention to detail. Now, obviously, this is probably the most important thing because it encompasses everything that we've said about. So have a really good look over your CV. Make sure that your I's are all capitalised, your commas are in the correct place. Make sure that it looks smart and it looks professional. The best thing to do is to get a friend or a family member that you know is pretty good at their spelling and grammar. Or on Word, get them to check it for you. Having another set of eyes over it, is the best way to ensure that you are sending over the best possible CV that you can.
So as you would have been able to see in our top 10 things people do wrong on their CV, with the CV we've just walked you through, there were lots of different mistakes, lots of different errors. So in terms of what a CV should look like, this is our opinion, and it's fair to say it's an opinion. There is no golden rule out there that will tell you exactly how your CV should look, how it should read, and how it should be formatted. This is purely based on my experience in working within the industry, and likewise Fiona's. We've come from 2 different industries in terms of our recruitment experience, so it's quite nice to see that we agree on this. And between us, in terms of the CV, a really good CV that we would expect to receive for one of our jobs would have a CV content order as such. So as Fiona said, your name's always at the top. You don't need to pop CV, curriculum vitae. It's not really necessary, but you do have your email, your telephone number and your address, all really clear, all really easily marked at the top of the page. We have a personal profile and key skills. These are 2 really important aspects of a CV. So whilst they are very similar, they are different. So, and it's really down to the individual to pull out those elements and that content in order to go into these sections. The employment history, starting from your most recent role or your current role if you're currently in work, and work backwards. But again, as Fiona said, if you have got 30 years of experience behind you, if it's not all relevant, you might not need to pop it on. But if it is relevant for the job, and you do need to go over that 2-page rule, then that's okay. If it's relevant to the job role you are applying for, it is always okay. Your education, again, is kind of a golden one. You always need to pop your education on your CV where possible. Start with your highest attained grade. So if you have a degree or if you have A levels, always start with the highest and then work down. When it comes to GCSEs, again, this can be a bit contentious, but we always say, as long as you pop your maths and your English grade on there, if you have them, then that is sufficient. If you don't have English and maths GCSE, but for example, you have history or you have geography and you have achieved a good grade, put it down. We're not saying don't put it down, but if you are one of these people where perhaps you have got 15 GCSEs, which is amazing, and it's a really big achievement, it might not be relevant that you pop every single grade down. So always highlight your maths and English if you have them. And however, if you don't have them, you can combine your GCSEs to read, for example, 10 GCSEs grade D and above or A to B, something along those lines. And lastly, the personal interests. Again, some people are interested and some people really don't care. We always find it's nice to have a little bit within this section. Again, we're not asking for war and peace, and it might be that you have just one hobby that you want to talk about, or it might be that you're one of these great people where you've got a collection of hobbies. Just pop something down. The personal interests always give a really kind of key insight to who you are when we're looking at a CV. Because at this point, we might not speak to you, we might meet you in person, but it does provide us a lot of information and help. So I think that now leads us to the end of our brief but concise top 10 things people do wrong with their CVs. I am going to move on to the next slide, which I believe is questions, and Fiona is going to pick this up for us.
Yeah, we had a few questions come in. The first question says, I'm applying for roles in 2 different industries. Should I change my CV for each one?
I would say yes. I've had it recently actually with a friend of mine. I advised them that they should have a different CV for each. If your CV is relatively short, then I would say just amend it. But make sure when you're looking at a job advert, really look at the key skills and experience that they're looking for and ensure that that is on your CV before you send it over. You might have, you might have relevant experience that isn't showing necessarily. So yeah, tailor it to the job role that you're applying for. So really make sure that those things that are relevant are highlighted and really do stand out within your CV.
Excellent. Our next question, are cover letters important? I don't understand what they're for.
Cover letters are, some people may say they're slightly old-fashioned, and generally speaking, when you apply for a job, if an employer is wanting one, they should always specifically ask for a covering letter. So covering letters are generally used as a brief summary for you to put forward your case as to why you would be a great addition to the team and for the specific role that the employer may be recruiting for. So it's not to recount your CV word for word, but it is to summarise you as a person and your experience that will then work as an added benefit to your CV when someone's looking at your application.
Excellent. Third question, is it rude to ask for feedback on an interview for a job that I didn't get?
Absolutely not. It's not rude at all. You should ask for feedback on your application, especially if you've got through to a telephone interview or you've gone for a site interview. Then it is definitely worth finding out sort of where perhaps you fell short. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to ask for feedback.
Excellent, agreed. And the fourth and final question, I don't have any work experience to put on my CV. What can I do?
So that is something we come across quite a lot. Both Fiona and I have worked with young people moving into apprenticeships where they have often literally just left school and they may not have had that weekend job that some young people have, or they may not have had that paper round, but we always suggest them to really look at their interests. So what groups have they been a part of, whether it be something like Duke of Edinburgh, or they may have been a part of the local hockey team, or they might have even been in Girl Guides. So it's not necessarily about you providing masses of work experience to show an employer, but it is your opportunity to provide the employer the opportunity for them to know about you and about how you possibly work in a team and those transferable skills, because the employer will never generally expect you to walk in knowing the job back to front, because they can teach you that. However, it's your attitude and your behaviours that you will be bringing into the workplace. So they will want to know that you can adapt, you can think fast, you can work with people, and you can prove that by talking about your time that you did your Duke of Edinburgh award, or that you went on a school trip to to a foreign country, for example, and you actually had to spend a lot of time with people you wouldn't normally. There are lots of things that can be used on a CV for those that don't have work experience. So my suggestion would always be is to think of everything you possibly can, pop it down on paper, and then, as Fiona mentioned, when you get someone to check your CV for you, get them to really look through with it and kind of see which is the shining example, because employers will never spend too long on your CV. So you want to make it really clear and really obvious that this is the piece of information they need to know about you.
Excellent. That's it for the questions.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much for everyone joining us today. I know we are probably finishing a little bit sooner than advertised. However, what we have said with regards to the CVs, this is not the rule of law. This is our opinion based on our experience. So if you're ever in doubt, get someone to check your CV. Would you agree, Fiona?
I absolutely, wholeheartedly agree.
Excellent, brilliant. Well, we'll let you get on with the rest of your day. Thank you very much. And if you need any further information, you can see our website address there. There's all sorts of different resources on there. So do please feel free to pop in and have a look around. Thank you very much.
Thank you.